On the day after Halloween, the ACU football team is treating its fans to a game in the Metroplex. I'm Sharni Morosky.
And I'm Grant Boone. We'll see if the Wildcats have any tricks up their sleeves as the coach takes on his alma mater. It's the Ken Collums Show right now. Welcome to Week 10 of the Ken Collums Show, presented by Buffalo Wild Wings from the JMC Network studios on the campus of Abilene Christian University. I'm Grant Boone, joined by ACU junior Sharni Morosky and the head coach of the ACU football Wildcats, Ken Collums. Today at 2 o'clock, it's ACU versus Central Arkansas at John Clark Stadium in Plano. Coach, this is not only, of course, the team where you played and led the Bears to a national championship in 1991. You were a terrific assistant coach there for many years before you came to ACU. As we get closer to kickoff, is it increasingly weird thinking about lining up across the field from the Bears?
It's a little bit different. When I'm in my building and we're game planning, it's absolutely no different. You know, you're about to play against another top-tier team in the Southland.
Got that right.
And you better play sharp if you're going to have a chance to win. Now, when I leave and I have texts from former players going, "Hey, coach, we're going to come watch. We got so and so," like they're recruiting people to come watch. So it is a little bit different week for me, but you know, it's fun and preparation for these guys, and we'll have to play well to win.
You've been at two schools your entire career, haven't you?
That's right. Bounce back and forth. Both great places.
Yeah.
All right, this is the fourth straight year you guys will play a game in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Why are these games so important that you keep going back?
Well, I'm a big proponent of that. I think we have a lot of ACU people in the Metroplex, and the fact is people are busy. You know, moms, dads, families are busy. They want to get out here and watch us play all the time, but you know what? They don't have a chance to a lot of time just because of their schedule. So, you know what? We're going to go on the road to Shotwell Stadium, either drive 15 minutes or drive 2.5 hours, and bring our show on the road to them. And I think it's fun for them. And it helps us in recruiting also. We'll have some recruits there, and but it's a good situation all around. Different atmosphere, but it's still an ACU gathering.
Yeah, it's a home game for your
That's
team.
right.
You'll get the purple jerseys. We'll talk a little bit more about that ACU-UCA game a little bit later on in the show. When we come back on the Ken Collums Show, presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, a look back at last week's game against Sam Houston State. Glad you're with us. Welcome back to the Ken Collums Show, presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. Last week in Huntsville, Texas, ACU took on perennial playoff power Sam Houston State for the first time in 30 years. With a look at the highlights, here's Daniel Zepeda.
The Wildcats traveled to Southeast Texas last Saturday and started slow out of the gates. Sam Houston would take an early 10-0 lead as the Wildcat defense had no answers early on for the Bearcat offensive attack. The offense struggled too for ACU, as this interception by Parker McKenzie would be taken back to the house for a Sam Houston touchdown, pushing the lead to 17-0. The offense would get on track as running back DeAndre Brown would put together a nice string of runs, resulting in a 5-yard rushing touchdown to cap off a 7-play, 64-yard drive to put ACU on the board, 17-7. The Wildcats would score again on their next drive as McKenzie would connect with tight end Noah Cheshire for a 64-yard touchdown to cut the deficit to 3, 17-14, with just 4 minutes left in the half. Cheshire would finish the game with 91 receiving yards on the afternoon. The Bearcats would respond, however, as quarterback Jared Johnson hits his receiver for a 33-yard pickup to make it 1st and goal for Sam Houston at the 1-yard line. On the next play, running back Keyshawn Hill would punch it in for a touchdown, putting the Bearcats back up by 2 scores, 25-14 at halftime. The second half would become a battle of the defenses as the Wildcats were able to hold Sam Houston for most of the third quarter. Turnovers would continue to plague ACU as Sam Houston recovers yet another fumble. The Wildcats gave up the ball 3 times on the second half, all of which coming on 3 straight drives for the offense. The Bearcats earned 14 of their total points on defensive turnovers. On the next drive, Johnson would find receiver Gerald Thomas for a 34-yard touchdown, putting Sam Houston up 38-14. Johnson completed 26 of his 34 pass attempts for 277 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 15 times for a total of 86 yards. McKenzie would find Jonathan Epps for his second touchdown of the day, making the score 38-21 Bearcats in the fourth quarter. McKenzie had 352 yards on 29 of 44 passing with 2 touchdowns and an interception, as he was sacked a season-high 5 times in the ACU loss.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Final score 38-21. Coach, for the second time in as many weeks on the road, you fall behind 17-0. They go down and score. They convert a 3rd and 16. They get to within a yard. They go for it on 4th down. Then they go in and score at 7-0. And then for the 6th consecutive game, you guys on your opening possession have to punt. When you see a stat like that, is that coincidence? Ultimately, it's about the final score, but does that concern you? Is there something that you're seeing that's happening in those opening drives?
Well, anytime you fail on 3rd down, it bothers you.
Yeah.
And because you don't want to punt. Sometimes punting is the best thing you can do, but not early in the game and not on your side of the field. So, you know, it's a deal where our execution was not great early in the game. It picked up, but you know, it just goes to show you can't do that against good people and win games.
You hold them to a field goal on their second drive. It's 10-0. You get the ball back, and then Parker McKenzie throws an interception that's returned for a touchdown. It's the first time that an opponent has scored a defensive touchdown on you this year. You never want to see it. It happens in the 9th game of the season. So you're down 17-0. And yet, Coach, like your team has done all year, you fight back. You get a DeAndre Brown touchdown. That was after a Cade Stone double pass for the second time. I think he's 2 for 2.
He is.
Throwing the former Fort Worth Christian quarterback. He had a touchdown, then a long pass to DeAndre. DeAndre took it in. And then that takes us to our play of the game. It's 17-7. And then you run this pass to the tight end with Noah Cheshire running right down the seam, and Parker hit him in stride.
Sure. We shift on this play just to give Parker a good idea of whether the seam ball is going to be open, and we caught him in the right defense, which is play calling, offensive and defenses. Sometimes you're going to have a great play call versus the great defense. And if they have a different defense called, it may not have gone for a touchdown, but we anticipated that and got what we want, and Parker threw a strike, and Noah ran and ran and ran. It was awesome.
He was huffing and puffing at the end, wasn't he?
That was a fun deal, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Noah Chester's been great. Of course, the 3rd generation Wildcat player. His dad, Richard Van Druten. His grandfather, Charles Cheshire, a really good player here back 50 years ago, in fact. But then, after your defense seemed to find its stride, you pinned them deep. A really clever kickoff, I thought, by Ben Hines, and Mark Roboto, the special teams coach, dialed that one up. You pinned them at their own 14. Late in the first half, you've pulled within 3. They go 86 yards. Man, they looked really good. We saw how good that team can be. Still, though, Coach, it's 24-14. 3rd quarter, you guys have the ball a couple of times. They force a punt. You hold them. You really limited them to less than 200 yards of offense in the second half. But 24-14 on your own side of the field, after 673 consecutive offensive plays without losing a fumble, Parker McKenzie gets strip sacked. A.J. Davis returns it 27 yards for a touchdown. That was a kick in the gut, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it's we had a matchup into the boundary. They're trying to run a little double move, taking advantage of their corner, and it wasn't there. Parker held the ball too long, and anytime you hold the ball versus a good D-line, there is literally nothing good that can come out of it. And the worst came out of it, which is a sack fumble, return for a touchdown. So those are lessons learned, and you know, we just hope not to do that again.
Well, it's weird because sometimes the dam breaks and the floodgates open, as they say, and 2 more fumbles. You hadn't lost one in 15 or what's it, 10 games since the Incarnate Word game last year. But then you lose 2 more. And the shame of it is that you were only down 31-14 at the time. There was still, you had 18 minutes to go in the game, and you looked like you were beginning to find some stride offensively.
Sure. We didn't play terrible on offense. We moved the ball. We had 450 yards of offense, and the thing is, we would have an explosive play, we'd get to the plus side of the field, and then either drop a pass. We had 4 drops, take a sack. We got sacked 5 times, or turn the ball over. And you cannot do that. You cannot be hit and miss. There has to be more consistency as far as our offense goes against good defenses.
And so they get a touchdown late. You get a touchdown late. By the way, Jonathan Epps, his first touchdown for ASU, that was at the end. I was glad to see him get into the end zone because you've asked a lot of that guy, and he's made some electric plays this year. It was good to see him get 6.
Sure. He scored against Lamar, and it got called back.
Yeah.
So we were fired up that this one counted. I mean, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
A very selfless player, does our return stuff, does some wide receiver stuff, and plays corner for us. So, and he'll do the same thing this week.
By the way, Sam Denmark, career high 14 tackles, the true freshman from Las Cruces.
How about a rookie being all over the place?
Yeah.
He's a good player. He's really fun to watch. Plays hard, really instinctive, great guy.
All right, final score 38-21. Offense to offense, 24-21. The 2 defensive touchdowns, unfortunately, they count on the scoreboard, and that's how it went there in Huntsville. As we go to break, let's take a look at scores from around the rest of the Southland Conference, brought to you by University Park Apartments. And take note there, Southeastern Louisiana in Nacogdoches falls to Stephen F. Austin. It snapped a 14-game conference winning streak for the defending league champion Lions, and a huge win for Coach Clint Conk there in Nacogdoches. We're back in a moment on the Ken Collums Show, presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
As ASU football takes on the Central Arkansas Bears, I took a look back at Coach Ken Collums' history as a player and coach at the school and heard what those around him 20 years ago had to say.
It's such a finesse, art type position. There's an art to playing quarterback. You're just as intense as everybody else, but you can't go out there and act like that because your job is not to run into people. It's not to expand space and compress space. Your job is to make decision after decision, second after second, and still be able to deliver the ball to whoever the play calls for. And through that is I've been trained a little bit to, you know what, you better be poised. If you're not a poised person, if you can't take a deep breath and step back in the situation and make a calm decision, then you're going to be all over the place, and your calls are going to be all over the place. At times, I'm overly passionate, you know, and that is in me. I'm a fierce competitor, and you know, there is a time to make that known. I know that the opportunity as a coach, just as a football coach or any coach, it is the single greatest opportunity for influence that there is in the entire society, because these guys have got to come in and listen to me.
He was the same in college as he is now. He loved football. He loved developing relationships with his teammates, and everybody loves Ken.
Less than 2% of these guys will ever get a chance to be on an NFL football team, but yet 95% of them will have a chance to be a husband and a father. And that, I take that statistic, yeah, we're going to do football, and it's going to be good. And we've got guys in the NFL, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to produce good football players. But we're going to continue to produce guys that are able to walk into the next phase of their life and know that God designed me to do this. It's in my 3rd year now. I'm finding kind of where I fit in, what I need to stay away from. And I think when coaches get a head coaching job, they try to be everything to everybody. And I did that for a while and figured out, you know what, I don't know that I was very much good to anybody.
I'm not going to take any credit for Ken. Like I said, he came, when he came to UCA, you could not ask for, I mean, he was already everything that we hope our student athletes will be.
The thing that I learned as a player and now as a coach is the opportunity to influence people and to grow people is unlike any other profession out there. And it is up to us to be obedient to our calling and do that. This ACU football thing is about what did God design you to be as a man.
While football travels to DFW, volleyball begins its homestead. Here's Hannah Little with more.
Thanks, Shara. The women's soccer team finalized its fall season this past weekend as the team earned a 2-0 win against Lamar, but fell to McNeese 1-0. The Wildcats finished 4th place in the Southland Conference with a total record of 8-9-2. The women's volleyball team brought home 2 wins previously in the team's games against New Orleans and Southeastern Louisiana University. The team was set to continue the win streak, but later fell to the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and Nicholls State. The Wildcats will close out its season with the last 5 games being at home. This weekend, the team will compete against University of the Incarnate Word. Head coach Jason Bibler feels confident about competing back at home.
I think just keep pushing. I think we've done a good job of that. We did a good job of that over the week, just pushing other opponents. Even against Lafayette, if we win that the 3rd set that we lost 25-23, that puts a different spin on the rest of that match. So I think as long as we keep pushing and fighting, we'll be in a good spot.
The ACU cross-country teams will close out the season as the teams compete in Louisiana for the Southland Conference Championships. The meet will take place this Monday, November 3rd. Senior Daniel Block previews the competition that is expected for the upcoming meet.
Lamar is very good, McNeese is good, SFA and Central Arkansas are both pretty strong, but we're going to go out there and try to mix it up with them. We're hoping for a top 7 finish as a team. Last year we were 10th, so we want to move up. And myself, hopefully if I can make 2nd team all conference or something like that, that would be awesome. And I mean, it's my last cross country race, so I'm just going to leave it all out there and see what I can do.
Thank you for watching the JMC Network Sportscast. See you next week. I'm Hannah Little.
When we come back, we'll preview today's game against Central Arkansas. Stay with us right here on the Ken Collums Show.
Back here on the Ken Collums Show, presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. Take a look at today's schedule around the Southland Conference, brought to you by University Park Apartments. Coach, how about the Battle of the Piney Woods down at NRG Stadium in Houston, the home of the Houston Texans? It's the 89th meeting between Stephen F. Austin and Sam Houston State. Now, you just saw Sam last week, and you saw how good they are. Stephen F. knocked off Southeastern Louisiana. First conference loss for the Lions in a couple of years. That should be a good one today.
That's right. And we've seen video now on Stephen F. just preparing for UCA, and they're doing good. Coach Conk down there's got it going on. That should be a good matchup there. Yeah. It'll be fun.
Big day in the Southland Conference overall. Let's talk about the game at hand here. ACU versus University of Central Arkansas. It's old home week for Coach Collums, facing his alma mater for the very first time. A school you led, Coach, to the 1991 NAIA National Championship, where you were also an assistant coach for Coach Clint Conk, who's now at Stephen F. Austin. So you'll have that reunion to come in a couple of weeks over there in Nacogdoches. Now, all that nostalgia is fine. Here's the problem. Central Arkansas is really, really good. They're 5-4 overall, but they lost on the road to open the season at Texas Tech by only 7 points, a game that could have gone either way. They haven't lost to a bad team yet, and they're 4-1 in Southland Conference play. Coach, in a league in which road wins are really tough to come by, they went to Nacogdoches, and they beat Stephen F. Austin. This is a really good team, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. When you first sit down and start looking at things, it's very similar to our last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You start looking at personnel. All right, where do we match up? You start looking for deficiencies. All right, we can take advantage of this, whether it's scheme or personnel. And you look from top to bottom. It's like, okay, I don't know that there's a glaring hole that you're going to take advantage of, and that's because of good coaching and good recruiting for a long time. And so their D-line's quality. The last 2 teams we've played, D-line's been quality, and that is football. How your D-line goes is how your season ultimately. That and your quarterback play, it determines a lot about your season. They've got a good defense, very aggressive. Offensively, they're super efficient. They just decided last week, you know what, we're going to run the ball. They ran the ball 27 times in a row at one point and rushed for over 300 yards. So we've got our hands full. We've got to slow down that run game and try to stop the big plays. They'll run game you, and then boom, they got a couple of guys out wide that make great catches down the field. So we'll have to keep that to a minimum.
All right, talking offensively for your team, Cade Munden, how does he look after a full week of reps? And then also, how are you going to adjust the offense game going into today's game for him?
Well, Cade, Cade's playing because Parker McKenzie's down, and we feel good about Cade. He's yet to take meaningful snaps in meaningful situations in games, but who does before you really get the shot to? Parker, it was the same way for Parker. It was the same way for John David Baker. So we feel good about what Cade brings to the table. Just a different set of gifts, and we're going to use those. We're going to try to get him in a groove, let him do what he does. He runs the ball really well, so you might see him run way more than what Parker did. But he can throw, he can read a defense, and he can function. So we'll look a little bit different, and it'll be fun. And he's a fierce competitor. He's a tough guy. So I'm ready to watch him.
He played at China Spring for the dad of Brian Bell, who was a quarterback at China Spring, went on to Sam Houston State and became the Bearcats' all-time leading passer.
That's
so he comes from a great program. The last time ASU had a backup quarterback start a game was 2008. It was against Tarleton State. Zach Stewart led ACU to a big victory. He won the next week down at Kingsville. He had a pretty good guy, as I recall, to hand off to number 3, Bernard Scott.
It's
was not bad.
He had a couple of cats to throw it to. So
was not yet. Johnny Knox
okay.
and Clyde Gates right there, as I recall. Come to think of it. They're not walking through the door probably at John Clark Stadium on Saturday. Hey, let's talk a little bit about that Central Arkansas offense. You mentioned it just a second ago, how multifaceted they are. They are the highest scoring team in the conference. Here's a great nugget I love about Coach Darian Doolin. He's allowed more than 40 points since he's been here, only one time in regulation. And that was a track meet. That was the Prairie View game last year, which you won by 20.
Yeah.
Other than that, in regulation, he's only allowed 38 points for a high. I would imagine that number is going to be put to the test today.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they can score. They do a really good job. They don't give the ball up as far as interceptions and fumbles. So we're going to have to be on point. And the bottom line is we've got to compress those running lanes and get those running backs to start bouncing. They're a little bit more downhill run than what we've seen. They do run some outside runs, but by and large, they're going to try to keep it in between the tackles. And therefore, it comes down to big D tackles and your ends. You got to compress, make those running lanes smaller, so Angel and Justin can come up and make tackles.
All right, Coach, you mentioned it earlier with Parker out, and then Lynn Grady was back this past week, maybe not 100%. So what's the overall injury update going into today's game?
Well, we're beat up, but every team in the country is at this point. I mean, it's football. Football is a crazy game that as men we love it. It's a little bit barbaric because the faster and harder you run into somebody, the more success you have. So it kind of equals out to, you're going to get beat up. You're going to get dinged up, and we've got some D linemen that are not healthy, and Parker is out, but Sam Denmark had a high ankle sprain last week, and we're hoping that he can go this afternoon. But our guys are tough, and they want to win. We've had a good week of practice. We'll put it together, and we'll see what happens this afternoon.
Hey, we talked about this a few weeks ago. This stretch, I mean, you go McNeese and Sam on the road, and you get kind of a quasi-road game, even though you're technically the home team today against Central Arkansas. Then you get Northwestern State. They have big wins this year. Then you finish at Stephen F., which just beat Southeastern. This is every bit as tough as we thought it would be, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but until you're living it, until you're having to go through it, you really don't know. And that's the whole part of growing our business and growing and learning what it is to go down and play in Lake Charles, in Huntsville, and then when we go to Conway next year. And so, you know what, we're going to have to do a great job in recruiting, which we are. And we're going to have to do it for the long haul, which we are. And it'll be this is a learning process. And going into this, we knew it was going to be tough. But when you take a step back, it's like, we're going in the right direction. We are competing in these games, and I'm proud of my guys. I'm proud of my coaches. We just don't have enough bullets yet, but we will as we grow this thing.
Well, enjoy the game today against your alma mater. I think I speak for everybody at ACU. We're glad you turned around UCA to ACU, and we're glad you're here in your 10th season for the Wildcats here consecutively. So it's ACU versus Central Arkansas. Kickoff at 2 o'clock. Pre-game show at 1:30. I'll be joined by former ACU quarterback Hunt Bonneau for the broadcast. 98.1 FM on radio here in Abilene and also around the world on acusports.com. Look forward to having you join us there at John Clark Stadium or online or on the radio. For Sharon Morosky and for the coach Ken Collums, I'm Grant Boone. Enjoy the game today. We'll see you next week right here on the Ken Collums Show presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.